Bo Nix hasn't been officially announced as Oregon football's starting quarterback this year, but I think we all understand that he will be. So, if that's the case, what should our expectations be for him? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster and lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks every day. Like, comment, subscribe wherever you're listening to or watching the show. Those numbers are shooting up ahead of that game against Georgia next week, which I am very excited and happy and most importantly grateful to all of you for. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet online, where the game starts. I almost coughed right there. Almost, but I saved myself and I saved you the trouble. So let's hope that doesn't happen again. Happened to me earlier today as well. No idea what's going on. So what are realistic expectations for Bo Nix this year? And I think to do that and understand whether or not we can look at him at the end of this year or as the season's going on and say he's playing well, he's played well, say this is a successful transfer, I'm glad he was a starter, or I would have rather just seen Ty Thompson develop, which I'm sure some people will be in that camp anyway, and I understand that. But I was thinking about what those expectations should be. And let's just first establish a baseline that Anthony Brown was not up to par last year, right? I think we're all in universal agreement with that. Was he a full-fledged disaster? No, he was not. I am not a big Anthony Brown defender, but no matter what team you have around you, you cannot look at a quarterback who wins 10 games. Did the team hit its ceiling? No. Was Anthony Brown a part of it? Yes. But you can't look at a quarterback who wins 10 games in a Power 5 college football conference and say it was an abject disaster. It was not. Did you know he completed 64% of his passes? I know that a lot of them came within 2 to 3 yards of the line of scrimmage, but he often did just enough to win games, but we would have liked to seen the quarterback position produce a little bit more. Not every stat that Anthony Brown had last year was as bad as you would think, but some of them were also not ideal. Like this little nugget that I pulled. Of the 14 games he played last year, started each one for the Ducks in 2021, 6 of them were under 200 yards passing. Now, the caveat with that statistic that I was shocked to see, I mean shocked, and passer rating's different than quarterback rating. Passer rating tends to be a little higher, but in only 2 of those games did he have a passer rating under 100, which surprised me. However, I think when you see a stat like that, you have to put it in context because that statistic is looking at the totality of the game. And he might have had a 130 passer rating for the second half of some of those games, but in the first half, it was maybe more like 70, right? First half against Utah, nothing good was happening on offense. First half of the Alamo Bowl, nothing good was happening on offense. But the second halves often looked a little bit different. So I think timing matters when looking at that sort of stuff. But overall, his season stats last year, he completed 64% of his throws, which is a good number, right? I mean, that's a good number. You'd like to have a few more downfield shots in that statistic, but that's a good stat for completion percentage. I'd be happy if Bo Nix was right there this year. And I'll tell you another quarterback that should solidify that perspective for us as Duck fans. 64% completion, 213 passing yards a game. Little low, but not as low as you'd think. 19 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Not a great ratio there. He also ran for 47 yards a game, averaging about 4.5 yards a carry, and he rushed for 9 touchdowns. So if we look at that and say, yeah, that wasn't good enough. Statistically, I think some of those numbers are slightly inflated, like second half of the Alamo Bowl, for instance. Or you could look at a number of games where he kind of laid an egg in the first half and the offense as a whole did, and then they came alive a little bit more in the second. But a lot of quarterbacking and what Anthony Brown was not able to do was execution in certain moments. Think about it in NFL context. I'm not a huge Lamar Jackson fan. I love watching him play. I understand why everyone loves him. But when I watch him play every year, I continually think to myself, the guy has to be better in a couple key situations because that's when quarterbacks really differentiate themselves. Think about every game winning drive Tom Brady's ever had. You know what he's really good at? Converting on 3rd and 7. I listened to a podcast host of a former NFL scout, or I just listened to a podcast hosted by a former NFL scout named John Middlecoff. I think he's really good. He's also entertaining if you want to go check him out. One quote he has that has stuck with me for the last couple of years is quarterbacking is what can you do on 3rd and 8. And I think that's where Anthony Brown came up short. He's looking to dump it down and hope that he, catches a guy in space who can catch and run, maybe make a guy miss or hit a running back out of the backfield or something like that. But the really good quarterbacks are able to look downfield, analyze the defense, and deliver an on-time, on-target strike. And that's what Oregon is looking for at the quarterback position, I think more than anything, converting in those situations to keep drives alive, also creating explosive plays, pushing the ball down the field. I think that's something where Bo Nix can take a step forward from what Oregon got from this position in 2021. So, what should we want from him, generally speaking? And I'll get into statistics here in a moment. Be able to create more explosive plays. You got to be able to push the ball downfield more consistently. Brown did it at times. He had a couple really good throws in 2021. There was a strike he threw to Chris Hudson, a couple nice ones to Hudson, who's kind of getting lost in this wide receiver shuffle, by the way. I'm a big Chris Hudson fan. I don't think I've talked about him enough here on the show. Love Chris Hudson. Think he can do a lot of good things, especially from the slot this year. But guy's a gamer. Guy's an absolute gamer out there. I like him a lot, and he's one of the many weapons that Bo Nix will have going into the season. But I think you've got to be able to create more explosive plays, and Brown did it from time to time, right? He had that throw to Hudson. We saw the second half of the Alamo Bowl. He had a couple downfield shots against Colorado, and coincidentally enough, or perhaps not just a coincidence, Oregon scored like 53 points against Colorado. And I was watching the highlights running it back on YouTube not long ago of that game, and I was like, wow, Oregon scored a lot of points. And I was watching the game and realizing, oh yeah, this is like the one game where Anthony Brown consistently pushed the ball down the field and utilized weapons like Troy Franklin and Dante Thornton, the tight ends, and Chris Hudson. Like, it was an anomaly, seemingly, from what we saw on the whole in 2021. But I think that's the biggest thing that we're looking for from Bo Nix that we should expect. This is not a desire, right? You bring in a guy like Bo Nix, it is perfectly reasonable for us as Oregon fans to have expectations about certain things and to demand that he play at a certain level. Because if you come in and you push Ty Thompson and Jay Butterfield aside and you get the starting quarterback job and you were, a pretty noteworthy transfer, it's reasonable for us to look at it and say, okay, well, you better be good. If you transfer into the program and you are the starting quarterback, you better damn well be good. And you have to at least be better than what Anthony Brown was last year because he had some serious shortcomings. The opportunity to create explosive plays is going to be there for Bo Nix. That's one reason I'm bullish on that particular expectation. The other stuff, I can be have a little bit more leeway, but on the whole, he's got the weapons to push the ball down the field and create the sorts of plays that were not there consistently enough in 2021. And maybe Mario Cristobal was a part of that. I think it's one of the most fascinating elements of this Oregon offense to watch for this year is how the philosophy changes and how the style of play differs from what we saw and whether or not Anthony Brown was checking it down a lot because that's what Mario was kind of coaching him to do with Joe Moorhead there, though I don't suspect Moorhead would have had a big hand in those sorts of decisions, but maybe that's just kind of how they were teaching him, don't be too risky, just, play it safe, be conservative and that sort of stuff. I think that's a fascinating thing to look at. The statistical expectations for Bo Nix. I'll get to those after I tell you about BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball. Go Mariners, got a nice W today. NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Ducks your first listen every day. The ultimate college football preview is here. A 7-episode preview with college experts, local team experts, and Odyssey college football insiders. It's everything you need to be ready for the college football season in one spot, covering the entire country, including the Pac-12 and the Ducks. Search for Ultimate College Football Preview on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You might even see me over there. You might. I'm just saying. It's possible. Maybe you will. If you can't get enough of me here, first of all, what's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. But I am over there, and it is a really good time. And there are a bunch of great hosts over there. The other conference hosts, other show hosts. There's a lot of great show hosts here at the Locked On Network who do an outstanding job. And so go check out the Ultimate College Football Preview. Okay, let's get into the stats for Bo Nix, and what he should be able to accomplish this year. Last season, he threw for about 230 yards a game, just over 229, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, completed 61% of his throws, and that was in 10 games at Auburn before he got hurt. And just a quick note, that injury was a bone. I think it was in his foot or ankle, but he should be totally fine, not a lingering thing. It wasn't a muscle tear or anything like that. I don't believe where, it could linger or never get back to fully healed. When you break a bone, it resets, grows back together, and then you're typically good to go. That's what I've come to understand about that particular injury, but I'm sure you could read more about it online if you wanted to. But I don't have a specific number for how many touchdowns Bo Nix should throw this year, but I think from a numbers standpoint, he should be around that 230, maybe even 240 yards per game. And I think the way he could do that is if he ups his completion percentage a little bit. He has increased his completion percentage every year he's been a quarterback in the SEC at Auburn. And I think it's very reasonable, even coming into a new offense, because he had new offenses there. I think it's very reasonable for us to say he should be able to be at least at 61%, if not at 62 or 63. If he got into the mid 60s, if he came out this year and completed 65% of his throws, I think we'd really, really be cooking. But if he's in that 62-ish to 63 range, I think that's solid. Like I would be content with that. The reason I don't have a specific number on how many touchdowns he should throw is I don't really care. Like, if he's throwing for a bunch of yards and getting us down into the red zone, and then we're just relying on the offensive line to pound it in, I'm good with that. Like, that's just one of those stats that it looks good on paper. You say, oh, we threw for 3,000 yards and 33 touchdowns or something or other. That's great and all, but I would look at those numbers, yards per game and completion percentage, in addition to touchdown interception ratio, right? We got to make sure that he doesn't revert back to being freshman Bo Nix when he, struggled to take care of the ball. But his touchdown to interception ratio in 2021 in 10 games in the SEC was almost 4-1. I would take that in a heartbeat. If you're in the 3.5 to 4-1 touchdown interception ratio and you're pushing the ball down the field as a result, I think that's excellent. Because one thing to watch with that particular stat, which is a really good metric, I think, of assessing how effective a quarterback is being and the decisions that he's making, is Anthony Brown's last year was 19-7. So not even 3-1. And he wasn't throwing for that many yards per game. I'm okay with the occasional interception. As long as it's coming on a ball, typically, right? You're going to have some that get tipped around or off hands or you make a bad read every now and then. Like, that stuff's going to happen. But I'm okay with a few interceptions if you're pushing the ball consistently down the field. The issue with that number for Anthony Brown in 2021, going 19-7, is that he wasn't pushing the ball down the field and he didn't have a great touchdown interception ratio, right? That's kind of the sort of duality that you don't want to have from a box score perspective as a quarterback. So I'd like to see Bo Nix continue to take care of the ball at that rate. That was rough. That was really, really rough. But I think that if he can be just a little bit more accurate, a little more consistent, not bail out on plays, right? Trust his offensive line. That's going to be a big, big thing. And it might be tough because that offensive line is going to get tested to the max against Georgia next Saturday, which is just over a week away. And I am so unbelievably excited for that. But he's got to be able to trust his offensive line, because one of the criticisms you hear from him is he gives up on plays too much and leaves the pocket. He will have a lot of clean pockets, and it was frustrating last year to watch Anthony Brown at times have a really clean pocket, sit there, survey the defense, and then dump it off to Travis Dye. Way too often, like when he didn't always need to. Sometimes that's the play. Not opposed to the occasional dump off. Sometimes you can get 12, 15 yards out of it if you're running like a 4 verts and a halfback delay. Like that can work. But you can't be doing that all the time because you limit the offense's potential. So I'm not expecting him to throw, 2 or 3 interceptions if he starts all 12 or 13 games, however many Oregon plays this year. Hopefully it's 13 or 14, because that would mean they get to the Pac-12 championship game in a bowl. So I just think that you have to be able to have the other side of it. If you're going to throw a couple interceptions, then be pushing the ball down the field, right? Have an average yards per completion that is sufficient to be creating explosive plays. Don't just be throwing it, down around the line of scrimmage all the time. So I think in the 230 to 240 yards a game, low to mid 60s in the completion percentage, I'd be happy with that, and close to 4-1, high threes to 4-1 touchdown interception ratio. I think those are the sorts of metrics that I want to see from Bo Nix. Rushing, kind of random. I want him to be able to use his legs. We'll see how many design quarterback runs there are. Bo Nix is certainly capable of doing that. He is a really, really good athlete, and I'm sure Kenny Dillingham wants to utilize that, but he also wants to keep his number one quarterback healthy. But I think having those sorts of statistical jumps from what Anthony Brown did from last year would be this resulting in looking like a solid transfer overall, because you bring him in because you think he's better than what you had from a season ago, and he's going to have all the tools to be able to do that. He's got a great offensive line, right? Maybe they struggle against Georgia. All right, throw that one away. In Pac-12 play, we know that this offensive line, assuming relative health, is pretty dominant. I mean, it's the number one reason Oregon won 10 games in 2021 was that offensive line. He's got some capable weapons. They're young and a little unproven, but I think they're poised for a big leap forward. Guys like Dante Thornton, Troy Franklin, Terrence Ferguson, who I absolutely love at tight end. I like Monteval, but in the pass catching sense, I'm higher on Ferguson. You got Chris Hudson and Seven McGee in the slot. Chase Cotto working his way around. You're deep at running back. You should be able to run the ball. I think that it's pretty reasonable for him to be around the 230 to 240 mark, which doesn't sound like a lot, but consider this. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with regards to quarterback being about timing and executing in certain moments, and that's the mark of a good quarterback. We all agree. At least I hope we all agree on this thing. Darron Thomas was a good quarterback. I really like Darron Thomas. He got to a national championship game and won a Rose Bowl. Those were his 2 years as a starting quarterback. Did he have a great offensive coach? Yeah, of course he did. But would it surprise you to know that Darron Thomas, in his 2 years as a starter, threw for about 212 yards per game, fewer than what Bo Nix has averaged the last couple of years, and his completion percentages were 61 and 62%. In the NFL, quarterbacking is expected to be in the mid to upper 60s. But in college, they're still college kids. They're young. They're surrounded by other college kids. And being in the low 60s is okay. And as long as Bo is at that 61 number or above, meaning that he hasn't regressed statistically from what he was a season ago, I think that'd be pretty solid. And I was a little surprised because I was thinking about the quarterbacks that I'd want Bo Nix to be like. And did I ever feel that Darron Thomas was carrying those offenses? No. But was he executing at a high level? Yes. And was he executing when he needed to? Aside from the 2010 national championship game, probably one of his worst games? Yes, he was. And that's why he was a good quarterback. Not because he put up insane numbers like Marcus, right? I'm not going to look at a Marcus or even a Herbert. I'm going to look at guys who were good, who you felt good about at the quarterback position, but were not necessarily carrying the team, right? Not the sole reason they won, but didn't lose in the game and did more than were just a game manager. I think that's the sort of quarterback that Bo Nix can be, and that would put Oregon probably in the 9-10 win range in the regular season if he can be that sort of player. So I think that's where you're at with Bo Nix statistically. 230 to 240-ish yards a game, somewhere in there. Touchdown interception ratio, high 3 to 4 to 1, something like that. And complete at least low 60s, maybe even if he goes 63% this year and throws for 235 yards a game and has a touchdown interception ratio of 3.7 to 1, I think that'd be a really solid year for Bo Nix, and it would be better as long as he executes in the moments that he needs to. It'd be better than what we had a season ago, and I think that's one of the areas where this roster that's still very talented, as we all know, even though they've had some losses like Kayvon Thibodeau, Verone McKinley, and George Moore the fourth on the offensive line. I'm not worried about the offensive line at all. Like I like Moore, but there's just a lot of really good bodies there. If you can get an upgrade at the quarterback position, then I think you're going to be able to get closer to your ceiling as a team than what Oregon showed last year when they stumbled down the stretch. Let's close it up with a mailbag question. I don't know if this was intended as a mailbag question, but I kind of interpreted it as one because I thought it was an interesting topic, and we're talking about quarterbacks here anyway. Anomoli Marty McFly commented on YouTube, which is one of the four ways you get a question answered here on the show. Hashtag AskLODPod on Twitter, or just DM me at Smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. DM's wide open. Shoot me a message, get a question answered here on the show. Do it all season long. Ask me about anything. Heck, ask me about my favorite Marvel movies or Star Wars movies, and I'll get on here and rank them. It's all entertainment, all good fun. But I'm sure you want every questions answered here about the Ducks. Anamole asked, as a previous 5-star quarterback, is there a chance Ty transfers if Beau gets the nod? Don't see a lot of incentive for Ty staying, especially if Beau does well. Bo Nix is probably going to be just a 1-year starter. He could be a 2-year starter if he wanted to, but I think he's a guy who has some NFL aspirations. Not saying he'd be an early round quarterback, but does he have the physical traits right now to maybe be a 6th or 7th round flyer for a team? Yeah, I'd say so. Look at some of the quarterbacks who get drafted late in the rounds. I mean, I don't think he's any worse than some of those guys. He hasn't had an amazing college career statistically. But in the NFL, Mike Tomlin has a great quote about this. When you're what he said is that if you're worried about a guy who's a little raw, who's a little unrefined, he has the physical traits, but he's not quite, fully developed. Mike Tomlin looks at a guy like that and goes, "What are you coaching for?" Like, you should feel fine taking a guy who has the physical traits, because if you're any good at coaching, which is your job, then you're going to be able to teach him how to be a more refined player. Bo Nix is 6'5", mobile, and has got a pretty darn good arm. And he's played a lot of Power 5 football in the SEC, and this year, of course, he'll be in the Pac-12. I think that's a guy who some team might look at and go, yeah, let's sign him as an undrafted free agent. Or Anthony Brown got signed as an undrafted free agent. Bo Nix can certainly do that. I don't have any doubts about that. And can Bo Nix play himself into maybe a 4th or 5th round pick? Maybe, but he's probably later rounds or undrafted free agent. But I think he has those sorts of aspirations. And so one reason that I feel that way is that on the Oregon football roster, he's listed as a senior. He could be listed as a junior if he wanted to, but he's listed as a senior. That plus everything I've kind of heard surrounding the program and everything about Beau and people who cover the team talking about it, it seems like he's just going to start for 1 year. So if and probably when Beau gets the starting quarterback nod this year, I don't think that immediately makes Ty Thompson go, yeah, I need to transfer. I need to get out of here now. The time when Ty Thompson would transfer would be ahead of the 2023 season if he's not able to win the starting quarterback job. So in theory, going into next year, right, and looking at Oregon's quarterback room, I know we're thinking way ahead, but that's kind of what this question is getting at. Ty Thompson should have the advantage over Dante Moore to be the starting quarterback, right? Let's assume it's a 3-man battle. Jay Butterfield, Ty Thompson, and Dante Moore. Ty will have had a year in Kenny Dillingham's offense. He will have been a college football quarterback for 2 years. So, reps with college guys and being up to speed and everything like that. He'll have that over Dante Moore. So in theory, he should have an advantage there. He's got a bigger arm. He's the higher rated recruit and has a few more physical gifts, though maybe he's not quite as accurate as Jay Butterfield. He should have a real chance to be the starter next year. But if Dante Moore shows up and is lighting the world on fire, and he gets named the starter, then Ty Thompson would probably transfer. I fully expect that to be the case. Would Butterfield stick around? Maybe at least one of them would, right? We've already seen Robbie Ashford leave because of a crowded quarterback room. Would not be any difference. Why you have to keep recruiting every position, including quarterbacks, because you're going to have a lot of competition there. You can have attrition as well with injuries, or maybe some guy leaves in the portal for another reason. You want to have as much depth as you can, and that'd be a good problem for Oregon to have, right? If Ty Thompson, let's say Bo Nix stays healthy for this entire year, which again, not a guarantee. Bo is a little bit of a reckless player when it comes to running, and he's coming off an injury. Again, he should be okay, but he's willing to put his body on the line. But you can also have random fluke injuries, and if Ty's able to work himself as the number two, well, he could be one injury away. I'm not saying he's rooting for that. Nobody is. It's just a reality of football. It's a physical contact sport, probably the most physical, other than maybe hockey, but. Actually, I don't know. That'd be an interesting debate. Anyway, so you get what I'm trying to say. Like, if Ty comes in and he's told, yeah, you're the number two, then he's probably looking at going, well, if Bo Nix doesn't perform well, number one, then maybe I can get a chance. Or if Bo Nix gets dinged up, then I can get in the game and show what I'm capable of. So I don't see this as being the time for Ty Thompson to not be the starter and feel that he should or has to transfer. I think this is a time for him to be able to ride it out and show this coaching staff what he's capable of, because he showed the last staff, but this staff doesn't know him as well. And so now he's got to give him a full season, a full year of practice tape, and maybe a little bit of game tape here and there to show him what he can do and set their expectations for how he can perform. And maybe they start to like him more and more, and they give him a real chance to challenge Bo Nix at some point this year. If Bo, really starts to underperform the way that Justin Herbert got put into the starting lineup like it's baseball, whatever. Got put in as a starter after Dakota Prukop wasn't performing very well. I think there's a lot of reasons for Ty Thompson to stick around for now, but going into next year, yeah, I think that could be a 50-50 proposition. I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.